surprised by was how many of you I reached out to who I did not know, or maybe I had heard in passing, probably by your company title, but you already knew who I was. And that was pretty amazing, to be able to say, hi, I'm Alex, I'm Tom. Oh yeah, I know exactly who you are. We talked about you all the time. And not just me. He talked about me, my mom, and all 3 of my brothers, and all his grandkids, and all his other friends, all the time. He was somebody who was very open with his love and his affection for everyone around him. So, a few housekeeping things. After I speak, we're going to pass the mic over to John Sanjivani, and then we'll have my Uncle Bill and my cousin Mike. We'll do an open mic after that, and then we're going to pause at 5:30 so that it does not go on and on and on, and take a little bit of a break, at which point we're going to have an ice cream social. Because my mom came up with that idea, and I thought it was pretty brilliant. My dad had quite a sweet tooth, and so it feels like an ice cream social is the perfect way to honor him, and also to honor the fact that he was sober for 27 years. And that is something that he was incredibly proud of, and that was a deeply important part of his life, and that I know as his daughter, I am incredibly proud of as well. Then we're going to pick the programming up again, maybe around 5:45, 5:50, we'll play it by ear. My brother Devin is going to kick it off. We'll do another open mic session, so if you had cold feet in the first one, don't worry, there will be another chance. And then we're going to close it out with my oldest brother Connor at the end. So again, thank you all for being here. The few comments that I wanted to make about my dad mostly have to do with what I hope that I inherited from him. I know I inherited his tear ducts. So for those of you who did not see him cry, I'm shocked. He would shed a tear at anything and everything, and I'm pretty much in the same camp. I hope that I inherited a little bit of his storytelling abilities, a little bit of his ability to talk with you and make you feel like you were the only person in the world, a little bit of his joke-telling ability, maybe, I think. I got my Irish accent from him, which I think is pretty good, and maybe if you find me later, I'll tell you a Patty and Mike joke. And if you want to remember any of the jokes, they're in the booklet that's on the QR code outside. So, a few of the submissions for the booklet stuck out to me, and I wanted to call them out. The common threads that I saw were laughter, his sense of humor, his patience, and his grace. So the fact that he could laugh with you, at himself, and at pretty much anything, but most importantly at his own jokes. And the fact that if you messed up, which I did many times throughout my childhood and high school, he approached every single moment of messing up with grace and kindness and making space to learn from your mistakes. And one of the things that he always liked to say was, only make new mistakes, which I really like. So I'm grateful to that. I'm also grateful, and I hope that I inherited a little bit of my father's absolutely unwavering conviction. His unwavering conviction. He would, if he decided that an idea, and it could be any idea, it could be a business idea, it could be an idea about what to do next weekend, tomorrow, tonight, it could be any idea. If he decided that that idea was good, he would run with it. And he would start telling that idea in a story-like way that made that idea suddenly come to life in your mind. And it was his conviction that made him devote himself to a lot of the companies that he worked with, and I think in a really, really incredible and positive way. And something that certainly is manifested in the many of his business colleagues that we see here today as well. But it was conviction also in us, and I'll talk about the kids specifically. So he had conviction in me. He had conviction that I would be successful in life, and he decided that that success could look like whatever I wanted it to look like. He had conviction in my brother Max's music skills. And yes, many of the submissions, which I don't think I told Max yet, from people commented on how my dad was always bragging about Max. And he had conviction in my oldest brothers, Devin and Connor, not just for being incredible lawyers, but also conviction in the fact that they would be incredible dads. And I think that that's panned out as well. So, I want to thank everybody for being here. And I'm going to close by attempting to tell one of my father's jokes that I've never actually told before. But as I'm sure you all know, my father had a relatively morbid sense of humor in the last couple months of his life. I mean, he approached his illness with an incredible amount of grace, and in a way that I hope anybody who is facing, or I hope that nobody is facing, but anybody who does face a similar diagnosis approaches with the same level of humor and optimism and realism at the same time. And there was one joke that he told a little bit ad nauseum that is one of his William Lima jokes, which are the Norwegian couple that are aging. And his Uli and Lena joke that he loved to tell in the last couple of months of his life was about Uli. Uli, who was on his deathbed after months and months, years even, of an illness, on his deathbed, sure to die any day now. And I don't know why I got a little Irish there. So there's Uli on his deathbed, sure he's going to die, when he smells coming from the kitchen his favorite scent, Lena's chocolate chip cookies. And all he wants is to try a bite of his favorite chocolate chip cookies once in a while. So he painfully crawls his way out of bed, rolls over, falls onto the floor, and starts to worm his way into the kitchen, where he sees Lena standing at the kitchen counter, and a tray of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies right there next to her. So Uli painfully and slowly reaches up to grab one of the chocolate chip cookies when Lena turns around and smacks him and says, "Uli, no! Those are for after the funeral." So thank you all so much for being here, for helping carry on my dad's legacy and all of you. And I'd like to pass the mic now to John Sangiovanni.
Follow Alex, awesome. By show of hands, how many of you here were encouraged to do something ambitious, audacious, entrepreneurial, partially by Tom Huseby? Raise your hand, please. Okay. Now, whether or not you raised your hand, how many of you, through the course of that journey or another journey, learned some core gem of life wisdom from Tom Huseby? Raise your hands. Lastly, through the course of that audacious venture, while you were learning about work and life, how many of you were brought by Tom Huseby to laugh really, really hard? Raise your hand. So, as definitions go for a life well lived, Exhibit A. For those of you that don't know me, my name is John Sangiovanni. I had the pleasure of flying information with Tom on two separate ventures, originally Zumobi and in the early 2000s, and then more recently Visual Vocal, where Tom was an advisor. And Tom was an incredible mentor to me in both those ventures and beyond. And by the way, it's incredibly telling that all my other mentors are also here. So Ken Wilner and Susan Siegel and Steve Coffey and Sonia Erickson, who introduced me to Tom, as I imagine she did many of you as well. And. So that alone is incredibly telling. I have a million stories about Tom, but I chose one that I think sort of lands the impact that Tom had in my own life. So I was early in my entrepreneurial journey, didn't know what the hell I was doing. Someone said I still don't. And I had some really important venture need or venture issue that I had to talk to Tom about. So I pick up the phone and I call him, and as Tom would, he immediately answered the phone. I can't tell you the amount of times that I was in a board meeting with Tom, and he immediately answered the phone when one of you were calling him. And that was classic trademark Tom. He was always available, always there. He always picked up the phone, which was incredible. And so I was stressed out and asking about something, and he could tell this was more than a 30-minute discussion. And so he said, John, tell you what, let's meet tomorrow at the Met Market. We'll talk through this. And so I was relieved. So I showed up the next day. He was holding court and, a little two-top. I show up and I join him. And it had been more than a month since I had seen him because it was the end of a board meeting cycle. And we sat down and he said, "Hey, since we last met, you're a dad." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a dad." He's like, "It's the best thing ever. But, absolutely awesome." And so the server came over to take our order. He's like, "Can you give us a minute?" And so the server went away. He's like, "I got a question for you. I know you want to talk about this thing, but before we talk about that, if you were to choose one word, an adjective for your new son, what would you choose for that son? What do you want him to be?" And I was like, "I'm not ready for this. I was prepared to talk about this other thing, but so I thought about it for 30 seconds. I'm like, well, you know, I don't. It's not that I want to be successful. I want to be smart. I said, okay. I want him to be creative. And I thought it was an okay answer. And Tom said, I don't like that answer. And he said, you say creative because you're creative, but you don't want him to be you want him to be him. So, tell you what, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. You need to come with a better adjective, but I come back. So I'm like, I'm not prepared for this, right? I'm sleep deprived, having your baby. I'm like, okay. So I think about it. He comes back, he sits down, he's like, okay, what's your adjective? And I said, you know what, Tom, you gotta give it to me, you're right. I don't want him to be me. I want him to be authentic to his true self. So my word is, I want authenticity. I want him to be authentic. And Tom gets that smile that only Tom could get, right? And he goes, that's the right answer. That's the right answer. Now we can order lunch. And I realize in retrospect, I see a few of you nodding, this was completely staged. There was only one right answer. He would have been, if I got it wrong, he would have gone to his car to fill the meter or something to give me another chance. But the reason why authenticity was so core to Tom is because when you open a dictionary and look up the word authenticity, you see a photograph of Tom Huseby. He was so core and so authentic and has inspired all of us in weird and wonderful ways that only he can. And so I realized that I'd never heard Tom's outgoing message, because every single time I ever called him, Tom picked up the phone until the day after he died, when I called Tom and I got his voicemail and I left a message, which felt weird, and then that message was returned by Janice with the news. And so it really bums me out that I can't pick up the phone and call Tom anymore. But he will live on in me and in all of you, and for that I want to thank Tom. So Bill Huseby, I think is going to say a few remarks next. Is that right?
Oh my God! Where's that mouse moving from?
Oh, there's a lot more people on this side. All right. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom's brother, Bill. One of the skills that both Tom and I got from my father is the art of public speaking. What doesn't count is speaking in a situation like this. That's why I'm reading this. And that's why I have my wife, Becky, by my side, just in case I don't make it. She's going to jump in the table. All right. Okay, one of the questions I seem to get asked a lot from folks is, who's older, me or Tom? Now, I don't know if that's because Tom always seemed to act like he was 16, or I am just looking older and older. For the record, Tom is the older one by 12 years. As proof, I would like to share a picture, if you're looking at it right now, of Tom taking me to my first day of kindergarten on my sister's horse, Pegasus. Although we both seemed to be smiling, it was traumatic. You see, it was raining, stray dogs were barking and harassing the horse as we made our way down the beach in Recife, Brazil, and my brother was not really much of a horseman. But that was Tom. See an opportunity, do something cool and memorable, see something cool and memorable, and do it. Many of you got to experience that trait, my brother. There are a whole bunch of similarities between us, but I would like to point out some major differences. First is Tom's sense of humor. His ability to match anyone joke for joke came from our father. Almost any joke he ever told was somehow related to a joke my father would tell when we were kids. However, recently, I learned that he really did work at it too. He had a book. It was like, we were all like, what? There's a book? I, on the other hand, did not inherit the joke-telling gene, nor have I ever worked at it. I suspect there isn't a person present that hasn't chuckled, giggled, or outright belly laughed at one of his jokes, and probably heard the joke more than once. Of course, I was never sure if the joke was really that funny, or the fact that Tom was laughing so hard by the time he finished that made it so funny. The other difference is Tom's super positivity. The rose-colored glasses that he saw life's situations through came directly from our mother. Unfortunately, she could not join us today. She is 100 years old and lives in Berkeley, California. But that's where we got that rose-colored glasses from. The innate trait for Tom to see the positive in people, the positive in a situation, or the positive in a business challenge was infectious. As many of you here probably experienced, that positivity made you realize that whatever problems or issues that you were facing could be overcome. Nope.
Hi, I'm Becky. The last difference was their approach to business. Tom was an unofficial advisor to Bill as he embarked on his own business adventure. On several occasions, Bill had him come talk to the company, key managers, or the executive team. It was always on point. That was probably due to the fact that he would always ask Bill ahead of time, what message do you want me to support? He always managed to bring his business perspective to my situation. And when Bill ran into something tricky, Bill would usually bounce it off of Tom. His advice to Bill was always appreciated. It wasn't until years after Bill started his own business that Tom finally said to Bill, "Why do you keep asking me for business advice? You never seem to follow it. But you seem to be doing just fine." It was always a helpful chat, and I can say that as the wife who he would come back from chatting with Tom, and he always felt better after talking to him. And we suspect many of you here that had that similar experience. In closing, Bill just wants to say that he will miss his brother very much. And thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Becky. I think I could have done it. I believe Mike McGee's next.
I'm Mike McGee, Janice's nephew. I just have a couple brief thoughts I wanted to share because I knew if I didn't put myself on Alex's list, I wouldn't be brave enough later. I'm old enough, of course, to have known Janice for many years before there was a Janice in Tom. But I'm also old enough now that it's harder and harder to remember those years because it seems like it's always been Janice and Tom and Janice. And for which I'm very grateful. And one of the things I'm most grateful for is that because in my life there was a Tom and a Janice, there was also a Connor and a Devin and a Max and an Alex. 4 people that I am deeply and profoundly grateful to have in my life. So thank you, Janice, whoever you are, for giving us a Tom. What I'll remember Tom most for isn't actually the jokes, though certainly you can't remember Tom without remembering all the jokes, especially because we've heard them all so many times. And he never got tired of telling them again, and frankly, we never wanted to admit that we heard them before because it was so fun to hear him tell them again and enjoy them all over again as if you were hearing them for the first time. It took so much joy in that. it won't be for his adeptness with sleight of hand tricks. Though one of my most cherished photos of our daughter Abigail, when she was, I don't know, 4 years old maybe, is the look of complete and utter wonderment and bewilderment as he pulled a ping pong ball out of her ear, as if that was something that she could even imagine was possible. What I'll remember most is how every time we would see Tom and Janice, which was never often enough, there would be this moment when you first saw Tom walking out of the car, walking out the driveway, walking to the door, and in that moment, his smile, his being, his everything about him made you feel like that was the single greatest thing he'd experienced all day, all week. Like it just filled you up. And I'll miss that. But I wanted to share it because as I thought back on it, it was something that I can remember to take forward and share as a way of remembering Tom. That's all. Thanks. So I think now the mic is available if someone else would like to come up.
Oh, Tom's sister's gonna come up. Well, I jumped up seconds before I was ready, but just 1 second. Well, I don't think I'll mind it. I just poured my heart into a piece that's published into, I have to lower this. I poured my heart into a piece that's published. You all get this little chip, and it sort of talks about how I just worshipped and chased my older brother. And he was definitely the highlight of my life for many, many years. But all of you know him as the jokester, but I knew him as the trickster. And he tricked me over and over and over again. For instance, and all my grandkids know this story, Tom would bet me. He would bet. He'd say, "Hey Jan, I bet you that 10 crew that I can lie down and have a train go over me." So naturally I said, "No way." Sure enough, he knew a place where the tram went over and there was a tunnel, and he went in the tunnel, lay down, and I owed him money. He also would build scary houses, and my friends and I would crawl through the scary houses. And truthfully, they were terrifying. He was very, very good at it. And he beat me at Monopoly over and over again. My mother took a huge map of the United States, and on the back, she recreated the Monopoly board. We must have lost our original or somehow. And we would play it. And of course, he had many more hotels than I did. But it was a lot of fun playing with Tom. And I just can't tell you how much I'm going to miss him. What I really was saying, I put in writing, but goodbye.
I'm Evie. Nathaniel. I'm Reese. Oh, okay, fine. We liked his jokes.
But you also like.
Oh yeah, magic.
So I'm Whitney. I'm Tom's niece, and this is my son and my niece and my cousin's daughter, his Tom's grandchild, and my other son Owen. And what they would all say is they remember about Tom. He was great uncle. He was magic Uncle Tom. Is what we called him. And on our way here, my cousin Connor, we were with the kids this afternoon. We went to a magic shop because we thought that would be what Tom would like. And so all the kids have funny glasses because they thought that their great Uncle Tom would be really like them to be having jokes because that's who he was, and they had so much fun watching him perform magic over the years.
Somebody has to break the ice. Hey everybody, my name is Jorge Tovar, and this is a story of how I met Tom. This was 2009, middle of the recession, as this Mexican kid out of college without a job. And as you might know, he was battled for the capital. And my wife, Tessa, she was her PA, or his PA. And this was, I don't know, on a Thursday or something, and she calls me frantic saying, there's a wine soiree and we don't have one of the wineries showing up. It's just the wine here. So I said, I help. I showed up, read about the wine, tasted it, and I started helping. And this gentleman, big ear, looked a little scruffy, comes to me and said, so can I try your wine? I said, sure. So he started asking me questions about the wine, and we started talking for about 20 minutes. And I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who it was. Later on, my wife introduced me to him, and I knew that he was from. Later on, the next day, my wife tells me, said, guess what Tom did? I said, what? He went to all of the partners of Voyager and said, we have to give this kid a job. I don't know how or where, but he introduced me to Ken Wilner at Zimmer. And the first thing that Ken told me was, you have a really powerful ally with you. Long story short, again, going back to, for some reason, he says something in this Mexican kid with a very strong accent that impacted my life. And I'm pretty sure that it impacted everybody's life in the same way. That right now, 15, 16 years later, I can say I have built a very successful career in tech because of him. And for that, I'm going to be eternally grateful. So don't.
There's a lot of people over here too. My name's Bob Taylor, and I was a friend of Tom's. We had an episode one day where he came to me and he asked me, Bob, I have a question for you. And I blurted out, 7. And he said, oh my God, that's the answer to the question. And I thought, well, interesting anecdote, and we parted ways. And I didn't think about it again, but he did. He started coming up with questions, but the answer was 7. And he would approach me periodically and throw one of these out, and I would respond like a trained dog. There it is, 7. So if you ever were witness to any of that, that wasn't, as impromptu as you thought. He gave a lot of thought to it. And it went on for months, and it was wonderful.
Well, there are a lot of folks here from Decatur. My name's David Brody, and I'm one of Tom's friends. Jay and I from Decatur. And just to show of hands, how many people from the community? You can see how integral Tom and Janice are to Decatur. But I first met Tom in 27 years ago, and that's why I felt compelled to come up here as part of the YMCA father-son group. And I see quite a few people in the crowd from that group. So it's a first through third grade father and son. We go away for campouts and things like that. And it's pretty amazing because the first camp out, it's time for the bedtime story. And Tom started it with one of his signature lines. It was a dark and stormy night. And he had this gleam in his eye. You could tell that he had absolutely no idea where the story was going. He had no story. He was sort of sizing up the crowd as to what level of intrigue and danger they could handle, undeterred. He seemed to know a lot of things about a lot of things. So he jumped right in and made our first spaghetti dinner for 24 people, sausage and meatballs. And I think you're going to see it rotate up here. There were 2 seatings, one for the first graders and then the second one for the fathers. And we happened the first weekend to be in Camp Arcata where there's an archery range. And Tom just picked up a bow and arrow from some distance and hit a bullseye. And I said, well, where did you learn to do that? He said, oh, it's nothing. I grew up in Brazil, as if everybody in Brazil knows how to do that. So fast forward up at Decatur, 2 stories that come to mind. One is, he liked to tell the story about the time he almost burnt our house down. He was staying there, Janice and he, but they were building their house, and he's the guy you want to be in your house if it's going to burn down. And the walls started to smoke and sparks coming out of the heater. And he had this vision of burning our house down. But then he ran to the fire extinguisher. He had the axe in hand, and he came up and he noticed there was a mouse in the electric heater. So he had the presence of mind, I don't think I would even know where the electrical panel was at that point, to find the electrical panel and flip the circuit and save the day. But it was always a good story. Better when he told it, as you can imagine. And I'm going to end with the fact that we had dinner with Janice and Tom in early June. He was in rare form, telling stories about driving taxis in New York City and his early days of rowing crew, his life in Rio, his life with Janice, his children, goes on and on. And turns out he wasn't always an expert sailor, though. He ended with one I hadn't heard before, which is unusual to him. He had a lot of them. And he talked about his early sailing experience, and it's a direct quote, so pardon the profanity. But in his first sailing races, he said the first one, he ended DNS, did not stay. The second race, it was DNF, did not finish. And his last race, it was DFN, dead fucking last. And so that's the thing about Tom. He did have a serious side, but as everyone has commented, he always wanted you to have a smile by the time he was done talking with you. And I think it's a tribute to him that we're all here and smiling. So thank you.
Hi guys. I didn't really expect to say anything. Don't really know exactly what I'm going to say, but I'm Max, I'm Tom's son. It's really great to look around this room and see all these people. whose souls and hearts he's touched in such a positive way. You know, it might be a business, it might be just a good laugh, who knows, but you know, he definitely made everybody in this room smile and had a presence that was larger than life. And it's really beautiful to look around this room and see everyone. You know, I know that, I mean, I can speak for myself and say that even when I didn't believe in myself, which has happened many, many, many times, he's always been there for me. And, you know, my mom as well, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm gonna miss him a lot. I mean, you know, I do every day. But, you know, I believe in the afterlife, and I think his spirit is with everyone, whether you realize it or not. So,
weird.
death is not the end, and that's how I like to cope with this. But I'm gonna tell a joke that everyone here probably knows. If you don't, then I hope you like it. So Patty walks into the bar, and he's got two massive black eyes. Mike's sitting down at the end of the bar. You know, he's drinking his Guinness. And he turns and he goes, "Oh, Patty! Patty, you poor sod. Come on, sit down, have a Guinness. What happened to you? You got two massive black eyes." So Patty comes over and he sits down and he says, "Oh, Mike, well, you know, it's Sunday morning, right? Sunday morning sermon just up the road. And I was there, and the poor old Mrs. McGregor, she's standing in front of me for prayer, and she's got her skirt tucked between her butt cheeks." And Mike says, what happened? She's, "Well, I felt so bad. I reached out and pulled it out. She whirled around and gave me a black eye." And Mike says, "But Patty, a poor sod, that explains one. How'd you get the other?" He says, "Well, before we sat back down, I felt so bad I took it back in."
That feels like a really good spot to take a break. So thank you, Max, for that. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll have some ice cream passed around shortly. And then Devin's going to pick it up again, and there will be another chance for open mic. Please don't be shy. Please, you know, share your thoughts. Everybody here loved my dad, and you're going to love him. So thank you, guys.